How's it going, my fellow Kryptonians? Welcome to a brand new Superman and Lois breakdown and review. This is for episode 5, titled The Best of Smallville, and we got a lot of developments in this episode. A very decent episode, I have to say. Honestly, I feel like this show, I was expecting to see some cracks by now, but I'm really not. I'm really enjoying it. And not only that, you may have heard me mention in my past couple of reviews, obviously so, that we were noticing the absence of Lex. Not that I still didn't enjoy all the other content that we got in the other 2 episodes, but I said, you know, for the next episode, episode 5, which we're in now, I think we could do with a bit more Luthor stuff, and that is exactly what we got with some twists and turns I still didn't really expect. But not only that, guys, I think I should also let you know that Superman and Lois returns 18th of May, just in case you weren't aware of this. We're going on a bit of a hiatus just because I think they're not only a little bit behind, there was some pandemic stuff. I believe they were filming episode 8 not so long ago, and considering this is episode 5, you can kind of understand why there's a little bit of a break. They need to kind of play a little bit of catch up, plus we got the Supergirl. So yeah, just be aware that Superman and Lois won't be back for a little while. But also, I would also love to know your thoughts on, do you prefer me uploading the Superman and Lois review first over the Flash review? Some of you guys have mentioned that, and I was doing it in the right order with how the Flash airs first and then Superman and Lois, but I decided to upload Superman and Lois first today. Would you like that to continue as of when it returns with episode 6? May 18th. So, ladies and gentlemen, the episode starts off with Clark talking about loving Smallville. We had Lois in the kitchen casually looking at her husband in space, sending off or assisting a satellite to another triumphant feat of, my god, he was literally lifting a whole massive ass ship above Metropolis. That whole intro point was a massive recent uptake in Superman activity across the globe, which as I said, you guys, if you're watching my reviews, I appreciate seeing little Superman feats. It's very important in a Superman show. Granted that it's a show with limited budget, with all transparency there, you still need to kind of pull that off. And you can do it in little things like that at the beginning of an episode, and that is what I loved. Not to mention, we got quite a bit of Superman action this episode versus Derek. Or was that Derek? But this episode's theme was, or just like what it was surrounded by, was the Smallville Harvest Festival. Now, Clark learned a lot about giving and helping people in need from his time doing the Smallville Harvest Festivals at the Kent farm when he was younger. It was really kind of adorable in a way, seeing how much Clark was into this. He just loves the sense of community. It's the best of what Smallville is, and just ultimately Clark is just so in his element here. And that's something that, despite having the need to leave Smallville when he was younger to find the man who he would one day become, and how all of that was a necessity, it's also like a place that he also regrets having ever left. And we get into those flashbacks this episode. That was a really pleasant surprise for me. I didn't expect those. I'll save my commentary for that for when we get to that. But yeah, as I said, he's so in his element talking about doing this, fanboying out about the food stands, funnel cakes, and how the Fishers every year they make this chocolate bacon, and he was just like, so good. One thing I would just want to lend a little bit of commentary to again is Tyler Hoechlin. I do this every episode or review recently, but Lois Lane is Lois Lane. I know not everyone agrees here about the castings of Tyler Hoechlin and Lois Lane being Elizabeth Tulloch and Tyler Hoechlin, but I couldn't disagree more of those people, with all due respect. I completely see how in this don't forget, adaptations are adaptations, different takes, but obviously you should always embody that character to some extent. I just don't see how nobody can see how Tyler does embody a very good Clark and embodies a very decent enough Superman, and I would say Elizabeth Tulloch embodies everything that is Lois Lane. Another thing I was pretty happy with is, because this has been teased for a while now, but I have to remind myself we're only in episode 5, so I was expecting something to come up, but this all began with Sarah asking Jordan if he wants to go with her to the Smallville Harvest Festival. These two are blushing 24/7 with each other. They need to finally flesh that out, and that was finally going to happen this episode. But we also had Jonathan talking about Eliza coming, and which is when Eliza calls him on the day she was supposed to see him and dumps him. Yeah, things just keep continuously going wrong for Jordan, and I have to admit, I expected a bit more of an outburst in this episode, more than what we got with just the drinking. I suppose they did elaborate on it with him wanting to move out, this, that, and the other. But I don't know, I expected, since that's been teased from the very beginning, he doesn't have football as much anymore. He's not a Superboy compared to Jordan. He doesn't have his girlfriend. He's suffered the most. Like, I feel so bad for him. I just really applaud this show in the complexities and storylines they're giving both brothers here. Everyone, really. I feel like the writing has done a very good job at giving every character very good character development on this show, and I don't feel tired of it yet. I was worried, just like a lot of you were as well, that the Jordan stuff would get eventually we'll get a bit tired of it, but I'm glad just as it was getting to the high C level of that, it kind of diminished a little bit. I know that's going to be played with a little bit more, and I'm getting on a bit of a deviation tangent right now, but I'm just grateful for how they're fleshing out these stories, and this was really the catalyst that made Jonathan just really voice it this episode. I'm absolutely sick of it here. I want out. I want to go back to Metropolis. But also, they did a parallel with that with the flashbacks. But we'll get into that in just a second, because first, we need to talk about Sharon returning. Good old Sharon, who survived the choking from the Kryptonian. I don't know how he didn't just take her head off, come to think of it, back in that episode with the wire around her neck when Lois saved her. But moving on, Sharon Powell comes to the Gazette with her son. Her son doesn't remember what happened, and all of this basically boiled down to her just being grateful that her son is back, doesn't care about the larger story at hand, and just wants out of there. And that sounded very scripted to the editor of the Smallville Gazette and Lois, and it probably was, you know, Morgan Edge saying, hey, Derek, could just go over there and just appear for appearances' sake, you know, that you're still alive and you're still good. And this delves into the very deeper storyline with good old Derek this episode, and the resurrection, which, if you remember, Morgan Edge said in that flashback scene, the resurrection begins. What is his plan here? And at this point, things got very, very dodgy, because we had the donation center where everyone was donating for the Smallville Harvest Festival, and we had Derek Powell. His heat vision was glitching out, and he ultimately just burst out with his heat vision, and it was starting to take down the building, obviously setting things ablaze. Meanwhile, though, Clark was at the Kent farm rummaging through things that they might donate, which is when the flashbacks were introduced. Now, as I said, I really appreciated this. I think maybe they should have made Clark a little bit older in the flashbacks. This is just some constructive criticism and just my own opinion in general. I'm not saying he has to be like, obviously in Smallville, Tom Welling was much older than the high schooler than what he was. Don't get me wrong, that's very transparent in TV shows, and I felt like they did a half decent job in Superman and Lois with the brothers. At least it's not the Smallville show level age. I mean, they're not 14, but you get what I'm saying. But this Clark who was getting ready to go, he just seemed a bit too young. But I still loved this. It was still basically Smallville in a new iteration. We had a young Clark with Martha, who wasn't so impressed with his shirt, and that I like the reference and how he should probably stick to flannel. Martha mentions Lana is still seeing that Cushing boy, which Clark was not happy to indulge in that conversation, because he probably isn't happy about that. What happens here is this is the last thing I would have expected them to do in the flashback. He hears a robbery in process, just darts away, and we see a young Clark in a ski mask confronting the robbers. He snaps the shotgun and makes them return the items that they stole, and that was really awesome. This is a Clark, though, who comes across a bit, as Clark says later himself on the bench, I was so selfish. He's at that age similar to that. I feel like it's obviously meant to kind of take nods at the kids, even though I don't think Jonathan is being selfish, nor Jordan. Like, they're both dealing with the changes and absolute lifestyle changes that came with moving to Smallville, which has resulted in a bit of attitude every now and again, but for a rightful reason, I would say. Whereas this Clark, he's just at a similar age where Jonathan told him that he was always meant for more, which is when it kind of came to that flashback of, I'm pretty sure I'm meant to be more than just Martha Kent's son. That kind of makes Clark seem a bit up his own ass, if you know what I mean, at that age. I mean, it does and it doesn't, because Jonathan and Martha told him that he was meant for more. Then he hears Martha saying you can't go running around playing Masked Vigilante. So yeah, it kind of creates that little bit of friction there, especially when you're superpowered. He probably feels like he should be doing something more, especially when you hear your freaking parents say you probably were sent here for a reason. Which also led in for that origin for Clark finding the Fortress of Solitude. Now, I actually thought they were maybe going to show that, but maybe he obviously needs to go and find the location and then use it. But anyway, Martha presents him with the Sunstone Crystal, whatever it was, out of the Kryptonian pod. They kind of kept it from him until this age, but Martha basically didn't want to admit that the Kent home isn't really the best place for Clark anymore. He's special and is meant for bigger things. She knows that, and she always thought that time might have come, and now she was willing to present that to Clark. Clark, being the age he is at that time, probably, well, kind of leapt at the chance to leave. Even though I did appreciate how at the end scene when he was getting ready to get on the train, they portrayed how he kind of both wanted to go, but was also not wanting to go and was very nervous. But yet again, imagining like, I don't know, this guy did look 16-ish to me, and just imagining him going out there in the world, yes, I know he's freaking Clark Kent, Superman, doesn't have to worry really about anything. It's just, it felt a little bit too young. Even though he was probably, what, meant to be 18, but Clark did say he was only a couple of years older than Jordan and Jonathan, and they're 14 in the show, so that does make him out to be around 16 when he was leaving Smallville. I don't know. I just would have, in my opinion, waited till he was like 18, 19. Maybe that's a bit too late, though, but maybe just got an actor who looks a little bit more, less naive going out into the world. But maybe naivety is a deliberate display from the actor in this episode. He's meant to be a naive Clark, but I don't know. There's something that just didn't sit completely right with me about such a youthful Clark going out into the world, potentially finding the Fortress of Solitude. But I would love to know what you think. But either way, really appreciate these scenes in the episode. Have nothing against the actor or anything. I just feel like he should have maybe looked a little bit older. Because also, by the way, we have to bear in mind that little Clark, 16-year-old, never came back. And it's also not completely unheard of that 16-year-olds leave home, but you see what I'm trying to get across here. It's just a little bit too premature, I think, for even Superman to leave Smallville at such a young age. But anyway, back to Heat Vision Derek. He let rip on the building. This is when Carl Cushing came in to try and save the day, but Clark flies to the donation building and helped him out through using his freeze breath, which really spooned out Kyle, because he's like, but wait, this place was on fire, but now there's freaking frost on the wood. How does this make sense? One thing I had an issue with, though, I have to mention it. I'm always going to be transparent with you guys. Not a massive issue. It's just something that does bother me, because it just makes sense, and it's not a decision I would pass off with. I would have changed it to a different location. So when Clark arrives, he zooms in on the scene. Yes, I know he has super speed, but you have to remember, he's in front of an ambulance when he just zooms in. There's people, plenty of people in the background. Now, you could easily just say, like, I could be on my phone there, be looking in the background for a second, and then somebody just appears. Even through super speed, I would notice that they just appeared out of nowhere. So I don't think this is a nitpick to think that also, not only does he appear there, he then just disappears into the building. So let's just say any Joe or Sarah or Kyle down the road was looking at this burning fire. They might see, and this is right in front of the ambulance, Clark then disappear. So the big issue about that is I just don't get why they didn't film that location with Clark to the side, where let's just say all the bystanders are here, Clark appears here looking at the burning building. That would have solved all my issues. It's just my only issue with that is that he's in front of dozens of people, and I'm pretty sure that it's not outside the realms of possibility that someone would notice a blur or somebody just move in and then move out. To me, stuff like that is important when you're dealing with a character like Clark in his hometown, being Superman, and using his powers in front of people to the point where it is an oversight. But I would love to know what you guys think of that. At the end of the day, don't mean to make a big deal out of this. It's just something that they definitely should not do in the future, because it is silly, if I'm being completely honest. Anyway, though, as a result of this, Lois is kind of cottoning on to the fact that Derek was around the building at the back when the fire went down. And then we had Lex and his little AI ball have located Lois Lane. Now, this is where things get very interesting for the Lex story. It was some subtle, interesting development. We don't always need war suit kind of alternative Captain Luthor. This time, we had Lex out in the open, and that's just great to see. So he says, one thing I know for sure about this world is wherever Lois Lane goes, Superman follows. So he introduced himself as Marcus Bridgewater to Lois Lane, and she said that sounds vaguely familiar. He also introduces himself as a reporter, usually covering business, focusing on big tech, but he also has a background in engineering because he used to work at Luthor Corps. So that is yet another, I like the kind of subtle smile on his face when he says all of this. Obviously, he's also talking with his other Earths wife, I'm guessing you could say. So there's a little bit of, I wouldn't call it flirting, but there's this familiarity there where he likes her, clearly. Even though it's not his Lois, that seems to always be something hard in a TV show and a movie for a character to differentiate, and I can't blame him. If I was in a similar position, that would knock me for 6 as well. Lois says that Lex Luthor, the only human being worse than Morgan Edge, and as Lex says himself, yeah, the guy definitely has his secrets. Heh 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 heh. Now, I know people are still thinking that this might not be Lex, Captain Luthor. I'm still assuming it is. Like, he's bald. He's only got the rank of captain because of the military storyline on that Earth. So, like, I think we can safely assume that it is Lex Luthor, just alternative Lex Luthor. Either way, he says he's a huge fan of Lois, and after reading her redacted piece, he thought there might be a bigger story here, so he wants to be on her team. The interesting outcome of this relationship being established with this Lois and this Lex is that he kind of has it in now, unbeknownst to Lois of knowing who he is, but also later on, I really do feel like it kind of should be obvious, but this is the Superman Clark Kent logic, right, with the differences between the characters. He doesn't know that Clark over there is Superman. So, yeah, there's like both sides. Like, they don't know this is Lex, but he doesn't know that Superman is with his girl, but technically not his girl. It's just interesting. I didn't expect this stuff to be thrown into the mix, so to speak. At this point, good old Derek goes up and missing, and the editor of the Smallville Gazette, I forget her name, I don't know why, either way uses Deborah's, or sorry, not Deborah, who's Deborah? Sharon's phone to locate him. But we can't forget about the Jonathan stuff. So after Jonathan gets home and this all comes out in the open, he says, I want to move back, I lost all my friends, I'm probably never going to play football again, and now you expect me to drop my life for everyone else's. And Clark tries to relate, saying that there was a time in his life where he felt just like Jonathan, and there was, as it turns out, in a similar way. But at the same time, I understand how that came across completely patronizing to Jonathan, because he's like, what, you, Superman? He says, no, Dad, I'm not like you, I'm not like Superboy over there. And this town, it is my kryptonite. I hate it. And he suggests maybe staying in downtown Metropolis or just outside there with one of the older brothers of someone he knows, so he can kind of get back to his old life. But later on, they more or less work this out at the end of the episode after Clark gave him that box. I'm just jumping to this. And, you know, they will discuss that, but he needs to give Smallville more of a chance because Clark can predict that his path will lead to greatness, and he's sure it will work out. I think it's obvious he's not going to go there. This character is very much staying in the show, but what that can mean is when we read between the lines there, Jonathan's going to have to find a way or have to find something in Smallville that he can resonate with. So that means that is coming, for sure. Like, for sure it is coming, because otherwise he will just up and leave, and we all know that's not going to happen. So I'd love to know what you think he's got to find after constantly being put down, football-wise, bully-wise. Yeah, the bullies are kind of gone now, but football's now not his thing because he's got Superboy, his brother being better than him, his girlfriend's dumped him. Like, what is he going to find that gives him some sense of belonging in Smallville versus just easily moving back to Metropolis and being everything he once was? I'm not gonna lie, I really hope it is powers. I think it's obvious he will get powers undoubtedly at some point because Jonathan Kent is usually the Superboy, and maybe that would lead to him needing to be at home rather than just going off by himself. But we're gonna have to wait and ultimately see as to when Jonathan's powers do manifest. It could honestly be like a season 2 thing, or like a season 1 post-credit scene where he notices his hand starts glitching or something like that. This all leads to Jonathan drinking at the Smallville Festival, and Jordan definitely doesn't support that. He says, you do you, party guy. Let's see how that goes. We also had this moment with Kyle and Sarah as well, which I appreciated. He came in drunk. Lana really didn't appreciate that. He wasn't obviously drunk though, but there must be some past between the family where he's had a issue with alcohol, abusing alcohol, and it really wasn't good for them. So I'm picking up that's why there's some kind of low-key tension there, even between obviously Sarah as well and her father, because she must remember the bad drunken times. Now that wasn't voiced, but clearly they're not happy about him being drunk. He's laying on the sofa. I thought the actor's performance here was brilliant. He starts singing that song, reminiscing at a time where probably things were a lot simpler. He had a much more close relationship, not only with his wife, but his daughter as well, when he used to sing her that song. She even gets to the point where she shouts, stop. You know, that was a long time ago. It was an ambiguous scene where you don't really know the full context as to what's going on other than some family baggage, but I'm looking forward to see that explored more. Yet again, I never thought I'd care too much about the other family, but I am, and I'm just looking forward to seeing how this develops. Sarah confides in Jordan about the sheer weight of all the really bad things that are going on in her life, and she was about to give us some context to her dad, because she literally says, my dad, and then she gets interrupted by the kind of drunken jock that comes out in Jonathan in that moment. Long story short, this doesn't end up well. Jordan looks after his brother. Sarah kind of just feels like you have a picture-perfect family, which couldn't be further from the truth, but obviously she doesn't know the context of the Superman family there. I also found it really funny when Clark and Lois just reacted the way they did to Jonathan drinking a bit. Like, I don't think I would ever want to see Lois that angry again. But anyway, this next bit caught me off guard, and we're getting to the near end of the episode now. Derek and Laser Eyes Lady, Leslie Law, just freaking kissing. Just like, what? It's like sneaky, don't let Morgan Edge catch you. It's like, what was that? Like, I guess they're two people who found each other under Morgan Edge's experiments. I don't know. Either way, Derek is worried about Morgan Edge finding out that he started the fire. Obviously, he doesn't want his newly bred turned Kryptonians, whatever you want to call them, wreaking havoc the way they are. Who knows truly what he wants to do right now with his new Kryptonian plan or revival or resurrection in his own words. But it's definitely not to, like, fire to community centers who are taking donations for the Smallville Harvest Festival. Anyway, Laser Lady says that she can fix this. And then we got to see that massive MRI machine-looking thing, which Derek gets into, and he's kind of infused with this heat vision-looking wave of energy around him. At this point, we had the editor lady obviously talking to Lois about this, which is when Clark immediately flies to the location. And he also asks, like, what that energy device was, because he goes over to it and asks what it was. They don't answer him, but he's now seen that this machine, this MRI scanny, heat vision-y infused machine, is being powered by this Kryptonian-esque looking orb, which is obviously contributing and giving people the Kryptonian powers in the first place, and could possibly lead into further clues as to how people are being resurrected. Derek says protect the asset, and as a result flies off. That's obviously more important, and they wanted to get Superman out of there. And this led to some cool action, like with them blasting through cornfields. We had Lex fanboying out saying, oh my god, we're gonna find him in his little camper van. Interestingly, when Clark says, what did she do to you? Derek said, she resurrected me, Kal-El. You're not alone anymore. And then when you pair that with the fact that Clark says, I don't think that was Derek, he said he'd been resurrected, whatever that means, that kind of does symbolize to the audience, or at least infer that it is meant to be someone. I don't want to just think, oh, freaking Morgan Edge is resurrecting Kryptonians, putting them in human bodies, and that Derek was actually someone else. Maybe it is. But I don't know, the way I viewed it, at least initially, is that he's powering humans into more or less Kryptonians, like maybe changing or reorganizing their DNA, but they're definitely now at least hinting at the fact that Derek wasn't Derek, and that he was resurrected. Like, maybe there is potentially Kryptonian minds going into humans, but we're gonna have to wait and see. I would love to know your thoughts there. They're definitely hinting at that, though. It's interesting, though, how he did laser himself, though, like closed his eyes so the heat vision just heat visioned his internal body and organs. Now, I don't know what Lex was doing at the scene. What were you really going to do with your handgun, Lex? You've made it clear that you have no kryptonite, so those bullets weren't kryptonite bullets. So what were you going to do, Lex, if Superman was there? Were you really just going to shoot him with your little pistol? The only reason I do say that is because they've made a point as to how he currently has no kryptonite. So that gun, I don't know what it would have had in it, but he's pretty brave. The episode ended off with like a really wholesome moment for Martha Kent getting her own bench, which leads me into what I spoke about earlier with the flashback on that very bench, which I thought was really kind of poetic. I also just felt really bad for Martha being left alone in Smallville all by herself. Like, think about it. Clark was there, fair enough, to lend a helping hand on the farm after Jonathan was gone, but then that lady was left there all by herself. How does she run that farm? But this is where we get that very interesting teaser of an ending. I'm very glad that we got this, considering we have to wait till frickin' May 18th for the next episode. But we see Lex looking at Lois and Clark on the bench. In all honesty, I thought, oh my god, they're actually going to do for one of the first times ever where another character recognizes Superman through Clark. I thought that's why his pulse was so high when the little freaking AI ball said that, but no. After the AI said, it's worth reminding you that this is not the Lois Lane from your world. That's when he replies, everything about her is the same, everything except she marries someone else. Now, I wonder why she didn't end up marrying Clark or Superman on his Earth if everything about them was the same, because I assume that she still would have done stories about Superman, but they just didn't end up hooking up for some reason. Now, the interesting thing about this is, does Superman eventually just go evil because he never ended up with Lois Lane? I don't think so. That'd be pretty weak. There would be no reason for it. Like, if they never got into a relationship, why would he then just go evil randomly? So, like, what we do know is that he's evil in that world. and that Lois isn't with him, which is obviously kind of like the Snyder Cut. Lois is the key. Maybe she is here as well. But also Lois was with Captain Luthor, for all intents and purposes at the minute that we know was a good Luthor on his Earth. What this makes me think about, because we haven't had the backstory or flashbacks for the evil Superman yet, other than just seeing him kill military people who were trying to defend their planet from him, what turned him evil? I would love to know your thoughts down in the comments below. On top of what I've just said, I don't know if we have enough pieces of the puzzle yet, but there was one more bit where Tag comes out of freaking nowhere, yeets Jordan after he was happily walking home after being kind of friend-zoned temporarily. I understand it though, she just needs a friend for now, and they're just gonna hang out with each other and be friends, right? But he had that all ruined because Tag appeared in a very kind of like, they teased he was going to like basically Charles Xavier's school for talented individuals, right? Superpowered people. And when he came out, I swear his costume was very reminiscent with the yellow going down of an X-Men typey getup. Do you know what I mean? Was I the only one thinking that? I'm pretty sure, was that his school uniform? Like, with that little Raven logo? I couldn't make out what it said. Maybe I will be able to after when I'm editing this. But he is very angry with what Jordan created in him, not intentionally obviously, and yeah, Jordan was getting smacked the crap out of, and the episode left there. Now from the promo for the next episode, it does look like Clark is defending Jordan from being shot from the military, because they said take him out, but I don't know if they're doing that to Jordan. I think it's more maybe they're trying to take Tag out, but it's going to be very interesting to see Superman potentially get in the way and stopping military fire. And as I said in the last episode, I don't think this Superman is going to go evil, but we might see some subtle justifications for Captain Luthor seeing that in our Clark, and maybe we might get a preview of that when the military literally potentially fire at one of his sons. Do you know what I mean? Even though he won't turn out evil, it might just give that really quick laser eyes moment from our Clark, who doesn't fire at the soldiers, but he just gets angry, and then Lex maybe sees this from afar and is like, yep, he's in there. This is why I'm taking him out. Like, I can see them playing with things like that in future episodes, and I've been expecting that this whole time at some point. But yeah, I'm going to stop blabbering now. I've been blabbering for way long enough. I would love to know what you guys thought of this episode. I thought it was very solid. But if you did enjoy this video, I'd really appreciate a like on it. Every like helps. It helps this video get out there a little bit more in the old algorithm on YouTube. If you want to follow me more, I'd really appreciate it if you gave me a follow on Twitter. Love interacting with you guys on there. I do have a Discord server that you can join as well. If you want a Boba beanie and want to support the channel even more, that way you can head to the merch store link in the top pinned comment. But that is everything. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you all have a lovely rest of your day, and I'll see you fellow Kryptonians in the next video. Goodbye.